Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the July 23rd regular session of the Joplin Schools Board of Education. Pat, can we have a roll call?
Yes. Lori Lesser.
Here.
Derek Gander.
Present.
Dr. Joseph.
Present.
Dr. Ford.
Present.
Brent Jordan.
Present.
Deborah Gould.
Here.
Sheriff Durham.
Here. Thank you, Pat. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving to our agenda, we have a couple of modifications. I've been asked to remove from the regular agenda items 7 and 8. Deals with the district support of some surplus vehicles. So removing items 7 and 8 from our regular agenda. Excuse me.
From the consent.
That was from the consent agenda, but it should have been from the regular agenda. I apologize.
He did say, that's right.
It's regular.
That's right.
It's regular agenda.
It's the lot
I need to
28 and
remove
the tires.
acceptance of bid for Lot 28 and purchase tires. I apologize. I was looking at the consent agenda. I should have been looking at the regular agenda. So consent agenda is not modified. Regular, remove items 7 and 8. With those modifications, do I have any motions to approve the agenda as modified?
So moved.
Thank you, Derek. It's been moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph. It has been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as modified. Please vote.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Moves us to our celebrations. Always a nice part of our evening. I'm going to start with Cecil Floyd, I think. Local author Izzy B. shared his books and talked about being an author and illustrator. Students visited Neosho Fish Hatchery, learned the history of the hatchery and why it was built in Neosho, and practiced math facts with a dice game. Anybody who hadn't been to the Neosho Fish Hatchery ought to go. Stapleton, we see good things there. These are all, it looks like some pictures from the hatchery. And I'm kind of flipping through, not finding a lot of things for me to read to you. Honey Badger Gym CrossFit taught 4-5 grades about fitness and put the kids through a CrossFit workout at Stapleton. Things are going on this summer. At Cecil Floyd, we had first graders made some s'mores and solar ovens. Probably go out there and do that on the pavement on some days.
Last week.
Not today, but McKinley second graders spent a week reading and doing fun activities inspired by Dr. Seuss books, learned a kindness and acceptance lesson with the help of a deaf dog, traveled to the zoo and the Neosho Fish Hatchery. Looks like they're having a good time. At Soaring Heights, kids created and trained on their own Ninja Warrior courses and engineered houses out of graham crackers and icing. Motion and Design Project. Cecil Floyd grades 4 and 5. The goal was to create the tallest structure in 20 minutes. The tools to achieve that goal were spaghetti noodles, marshmallows, 1 piece of yarn, and 2 pieces of tape. I would lose that competition. Water Day at Cecil Floyd Kindergarten. Looks like we have a fire truck out there spraying things down, kids playing. Fifth graders at Cecil Floyd enjoyed learning about force and motion with balloon projects and played multiplication bingo to keep math skills sharp. A ranger from George Washington Carver National Park made a presentation on Missouri snakes where they allowed to see and touch live snakes. At Joplin High School Summer School, we had the summer school production of Grease this summer, and it was an amazing show. I heard great things about that
It
production.
was fantastic. And to think that they put it together in such a short time frame. It's amazing.
That entire department out there is
And we
just
had a
killing it.
special musician, an honored special musician in the band at the Grease musical, Dr. Gilbert.
Many of us are fortunate to know Dr. Gilbert's great talents extend beyond principal at Joplin High School. Community service. Wednesday, July 17th was KCU Week Care Day, where KCU freshman students worked throughout the Joplin community. 12 KCU students participated by washing and cleaning the district's buses. Thank you, students. Brighter Futures for Hungry Kids. Arvest presented a check to Bright Futures Joplin for $7,110. This is part of Arvest's Million Meals program designed to help fight local hunger. The money will be used to support Bright Futures Joplin's Snack Pack program. Thank you very much, Arvest. FTC Adult Education comes home. The FTC Adult Education Center here in this building held an open house on Thursday, July 18th to showcase the 3 programs available at their new location: practical nursing, surgical technology, and medical assistant. If anybody who's not been through the first floor of this building to see what's been done for our Adult Education Center, I would encourage you to do so. It's really a wonderful makeover, and Franklin Tech is a great part of our district. That takes us to the superintendent for her data report.
Okay, and the first
Oh,
note.
excuse me, I
I miss
skipped.
it?
I missed
Sorry.
something. I need to
Yes,
go to the
you
Board of Education Policy Committee. Mr. Jordan?
We met on July 8th. It was a short meeting. We have 2 policies to bring before the board for first readings. One dealing with retaliation, and the other food service. It's mainly cleaning up of some language, but Dr. Zucchetto will address that later in the meeting. So,
Thank you, Brent.
yep.
Does anybody have any questions for Brent concerning the BOE Policy Committee? Thank you. That does take us to Dr. Moss then.
And so we have our health and dental update. First, Dr. Langford.
You received the information on the health and dental. When we go through, we've seen a closing of the revenue as it's compared to expenditures for the year. If you recall, October 1st, we began a revised self-funded program. We lowered our premiums, therefore our revenue is less. We had some fairly sizable expenses this year. We were trailing out from the previous plan that we had and then getting a new one started. So this year we had some higher claims. That said, we still gained about $200,000 in the fund balance. Now, because of some major claims, and Jamie is here this evening to talk a little bit about the reinsurance renewal, the plan struggled a little bit, but we had good reserves, and that really helped us out. So overall, there's nothing in the report that we've not been aware of. Becky monitors very closely, works closely with Jamie, and we try to stay on top of this. I would like to point out in the bullet 3 of that, it says that we made $163 in interest. Just so happened the way our investments fell, we didn't have an investment mature in that month. We have a good set of investments, but I'd like to report that in interest for the health fund last year, we made $129,505. So that is money that didn't come in the form of premiums, but because we've been very aggressive in keeping the money invested and also having an adequate cash flow to meet the claims as they come due. But I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have.
And then moving on to financial statements.
If you take a look at the financial statements, it's hard to believe we're sitting here almost through the first month of the current fiscal year that we just closed. The report that you have is reflective of the closure of the fiscal year 19. And again, the most meaningful piece of information that helps you really get your head around what we were doing is this single page. If you would scroll down, keep going on down a little bit there, Eric. This page right here, if we remember, we created that 2 or 3 years ago so you can get an idea comparatively speaking. I will say that once we revised the budget in June, and then we, as far as the cash account, this is unaudited, and we'll have, there may be some changes, but I rather doubt it because Shelley's very precise in what she does. But we met our revenue projection and actually exceeded it by about 1%. with a $100 million budget, that's nearly $1 million. And so that piece is good. If you look on the expenditure side, we stayed well within our budget, spending only 93% of what we had been budgeting. If you look back and compare it to the 18, it looks like we spent a whole lot more money last year in some ways, but the thing that is going to be nice going forward, 18 had in it our health fund. And if you remember last year, we set a separate fund out, so now we'll be really be able, you won't be impacted by the health fund being on one side and on the other. But I will say that the fiscal year for last year ended with Joplin being in a very solid financial position. And of course, all of that's subject to maintaining our student enrollment. It's subject to continued growth in our assessed valuation, which we received our Jasper County numbers, and we're a little bit disappointed in what they were. We hope to get Newton counties tomorrow, but still, that said, we are in a very good financial position. And you and your board, that's critically important as you try to make your plans in providing the programs for your students that you have. So I feel very good about where you are going into this year. So our goal is to go through the year and someone being able to say next year at this time, we feel very good about it.
Thank you, Doctor. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Langford? As a board member, that's awfully good news to hear. Thank you.
And then item C, under Superintendent's Data Report, is Dr. Saketa with Energy Intelligence Service.
I'd like to have Aaron and David from Train come up with Dave Pettit here from Joplin Schools and talk to you about the energy audit and the analytics that we try to put in place to help our efficiency in our systems. And we started with JHS, and we worked really hard to try to be more energy efficient and also improve the quality of the air and everything else in the facility. And they want to give you an update on where we are since we started last fall. Okay.
Sure. Well, first of all, we're used to seeing data in the classroom, but we're now currently using data to help us within the buildings that are housing those classrooms. And so we wanted to bring our folks from Train to come and share with you and give you essentially an 11-month update. We started this process in August of last year with your approval with Intelligent Train Services and looking at Joplin High School and how can we make it work better for us. Essentially looking at the 3 C's that we were concerned about: cost, CO2, and then also the comfortability of the building and taking care of our students. And so I've asked, David and Aaron are coming tonight, and we're going to have a little mercy on you because this is their report that they gave to us, and I got them to get us down to about 7 slides. And so I'm going to turn that over to them to give you some explanations about what we've experienced, what we've noticed, and what may be outlying for us in the future.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm Erin Rao with Train. Thank you for allowing us to come to kind of chat with you guys about it today. And what I find very exciting, hopefully you guys find exciting too, I'm kind of nerdy like that, the data analytics program, whereas a traditional building automation system, you go off of a single point of failure, and by that point, something has already failed. You know, Dave's team gets an alarm that says this space is hot, or this pump has failed. You know, and then it's a very reactive process for them, and that's traditionally what's done across all the buildings, whether it's schools or not. The neat thing about the data analytics program is it is looking at hundreds of points in the background all the time, running data analytics tests on all of those points and determining not only what's going on with the building, but is there a way to optimize it? Could this piece of equipment run a little bit better? Is this piece of equipment at risk for failure? So at that point, we can be a lot more proactive instead of reactive when something has already failed. So like Dave said, we started in August of last year. What we do is we kind of go through quarterly and do a deep dive building assessment by our technicians and our energy engineers, and then we meet as a team to kind of go through what we found. So again, that year-end report kind of highlights everything. I find it very interesting, but maybe a lot of the other people in the room might need it for a little insomnia check. But there's a lot of information about all the great things Dave and the team has done. So I wanted to go over a couple of quick highlights if you want to go to the next slide. One of the big things we talked about, the 3 C's, was the CO2 levels. And this was something that, had we not kind of entered in this program, we may not have even realized was an issue. And this wasn't across the board. There were just some spaces that at times were getting to those high CO2 levels. So what we did is we did a deep dive on all of the spaces, and we kind of started with our worst offenders list and said, okay, how can we reprogram the system so that they aren't getting to those levels? So if you go to the next slide, so that first slide was back last fall, and I know it's kind of hard to see the numbers that we're talking about here, but those all are now below. Those 5 of those top 10 worst offenders are what's displayed up there, and those are all below the 1,200 parts per million, which is right in range with where it needs to be. So that was a good news story. The next couple of slides show a couple of other good news stories on other spaces that were on those worst offenders list, and where they sit now, those are all right around 1,100 parts per million. So whereas it takes a little bit more to bring in more fresh air, but this is the right thing to make sure that the spaces are comfortable for the students in the best learning environment. One of the other great pieces, of course, another one of the C's, was the energy savings piece. The data that you're seeing there is what we call our baseline. We took 2 years of electrical data, and that's 15-minute interval data for the high school, and that established our baseline model. So we had 2 years of data, and then what that 2 years of data then does is it predicts what the energy usage is going to be on any given day, normalized for weather. And then when the building does better than what the model is, we get a positive. So the green and the positive is a good thing here. The building is performing better than what the model showed. And then if it's at any point it's at a negative, then it's the down arrow and it's red. So what you'll see here, there's 3 main building meters. Where we see the majority of our savings was in the central plant. We did quite a lot of updates to how the central plant was operating, and that the central plant alone now against what the building model was saving around $28,000 for this study period. You'll notice the main building actually was performing slightly worse than the model, and the reasoning behind that is what we talked about with those CO2 levels. We were bringing in more fresh air than we were previously, so more fresh air means we have to spend a little bit more money to heat and cool that. So it's not necessarily a good thing that we're spending more money, but we're doing it to make sure that the CO2 levels are at the right point in the building. So that's just a little bit more in depth for the chiller plant. So you can see the black line and the blue line are the model, and then the actual usage, and then the delta between those are shown in the chart below. Green being that it performed better than expected, and red being that it performed worse than expected. The 2 red lines that you can see in there that were in the fall were 2 major programming changes that we made to the system, and you can kind of see as a result of those changes, that's when that plant really started to overperform. So we're really excited about how everything went this year. I think I'll let Dave talk more than me. I thought that it was a great program, and then we'll have David here talk a little bit more about the future.
Sure. So moving forward, we certainly look forward to the opportunity to continue this partnership to help drive these good news stories to share with everyone. In the coming year, what we want to focus on is continuing this building automation improvement, and also making sure we're maintaining or improving space comfort as we've proven so far. The key performance indicators, that the KPIs we have listed there specifically that we want to look at, energy efficiency and indoor air quality. As we've proven over the last year, we had the ability to improve that and greatly increase the success rate of your building. We want to keep focusing on those, not only to make sure we maintain these improved levels, but to see if we can even push it a little bit better. We want to minimize overrides in the system. So that would be manual operator overrides, making a static situation instead of letting the automation system do its job on its own. We see overrides come about due to lack of faith in the system, and it's typically due to good cause, that lack of faith. One of the things that this sort of analytic process gives us is the ability to uncover these reasons that our system isn't acting in a completely automated fashion in the way that it could. So we're able to increase that faith that the building operators have in the system, thereby giving your facilities and maintenance staff more time to focus on other things and let our system run in a more automated manner. And then building comfort, not only CO2 levels, but we also want to focus on making sure temperature and humidity stays within range of what the various professional societies tell us are comfortable for students and conducive to the best learning possible. So with that, I want to thank you for your time, your attention here tonight, and also the partnership that we shared over the last year. And we look forward to bringing more good news stories to you in the future.
Thank you.
Any questions from you all?
That's a good sign. Thank you for your help and your efficiencies that we're gaining in our schools. That's dollars in our pockets, so we thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to public comments regarding agenda action items. This evening, we have Zachary Spiring. Zachary, I'm going to go ahead and state the information that you would have stated if you were walking up there, just to let you know. Zachary lives on North Byers here in Joplin, and he wishes to speak concerning the recommendation of the Long-Term Facilities Committee. Zachary, when you walk up to the podium, standing the microphone, please give your name and address. You don't need to do that because I just did, I believe. But please do not identify any district personnel or student by name or by any other identifiable information. You have 3 minutes, and welcome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Appreciate all you guys are doing. I do want to address the recommendations that you were given regarding the long-term facilities plan at the last meeting, as it was talked about that might be coming up again. I actually have something for you guys, but I didn't bring nearly enough copies, so I don't know how I'm going to work that out. But
Distributed. Yeah, thank you. Go ahead. Appreciate it.
So this proposal that I'm giving you is the work of many people, too many to name right now, but several community members who share a concern about our students and our community and what we can do to make it better. Any typos or errors you see are mine. We haven't approached this topic lightly. We've invested a lot of time, we've done a lot of research, and we have listened. And my desire is just that you would do the same for us today. We've heard on the one hand that Joplin should follow precedent to consolidate schools because that's what we've done since the tornado. On the other hand, we've heard that the administration and board would like to work with us to keep our neighborhood schools if that's possible. Well, what I presented is just some solutions to some of the problems that we've seen with having our neighborhood schools. A number of people have already made the case for smaller neighborhood schools, so I'm not going to repeat all of that. You've got some background and literature there that explains a lot of that. Just point out once again that what we have found is that neighborhood schools aren't really that much more expensive to run than the larger schools once you factor in transportation. And I think that's an important addition. What I do want to express is that those of us who have worked on this agree with a lot of what the Long-Term Facility Committee has presented. We think the idea of the addition for Kelsey Norman is a great idea. It's already a wonderful, strong neighborhood school, and this will help it stay strong for years to come. We think that's great. Columbia Elementary School obviously is facing some critical structural issues, things that need to be done in a timely manner. But they also necessitate it being done in the right way. So if putting it off for a month or two to make sure we have the right solution is what it takes, I think that's worthwhile, but not putting off for a year. We tend to feel that despite our emotional attachment to the Columbia building, that renovating it is probably not the best use of district funds. Although I think a second opinion on renovation would not be a bad idea. We propose that Columbia be rebuilt, the estimated $15.2 million. What we know now about the mining and infill locations, there is sufficient space on the property to rebuild. There's also 2 houses at the end of that block that could be purchased, and that space could be used as well if needed. If it's deemed that that is just not usable space for building, there is another property about 2 blocks to the west that could also be potentially used, and you have the information there. Here's the thing, if we rebuild Columbia, according to our bonding capacity, we still have about $5 million left. And we believe that investing into West Central Elementary would be a good use for those funds. It's a structurally sound building. It's a school that's doing really well. I got to meet with the principal today and talk about some of the things that are happening at West Central, and it's really exciting. It's made a lot of progress, and I feel like the whole perception of that school has changed over the years. And so there are some things that need to be addressed to that facility, and I think that can easily be solved for less than $5 million. And you have our recommendations there. But things like dealing with the entrance along 7th Street, some safety issues, and honestly, they could use a new library and some new music and art space, and I think that we could do that for them and still remain within our bonding capacity and still be fiscally responsible with the taxpayers' money. So just in conclusion, what I want to say is we brought some suggestions, some things that we think will help solve some of the issues, and we would appreciate looking over it. I don't think that's the only possible solution, but I think there's a very strong feel in the community that we do love our community schools, our neighborhood schools, that it's one of the treasures of Joplin, and we would like to see that continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Zachary.
Thank you.
That moves us to our consent agenda. If everybody's had an opportunity to review our consent agenda, I would entertain a motion.
I will make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Lori. It's been moved and seconded by Derek that we approve our consent agenda as presented. Any discussion on that? Please vote.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Takes us to our regular agenda, health plan reinsurance renewal. Justin?
I'd like to ask Jamie Brummett to come, and she's of Barker Phillips and Jackson to present for us.
All right. Hi, good to see everybody again. Saw you last May, and we talked about what we were expecting with the renewal, worst case scenario, gave you an update on where things were with claims. So we had that conversation in May. Well, since May, we've had a couple bad months. So I just want to give you guys a heads up on that. Some very, very large unexpected claims that have hit the health plan, specifically in the month of June. So the June was a really bad month for the health plan. So when we got our increase, if you guys will remember, we've got several different things that go into the premium that the district pays and the employees pay. So you have claims cost and the fixed cost. So the fixed cost is the reinsurance. So that's that protection, that per person protection, that entire claim bucket protection for the medical plan. So those are fixed costs that you have. So your fixed cost for this year, there is an increase of $107,000 for the reinsurance. So what they do is they project how much has enrollment increased? What is medical trend? Now, medical trend is just a number they can throw out there. Some companies will tell you it's 5%, some will say it's 12%. So it really depends on who you're talking to, but medical trend is a number that they use. They also look at ongoing high-cost claimants, and they tell you how much their reinsurance protection is going to be. So they could have raised your stop loss, that's the reinsurance, by 50%. They raised it by 28%. And given these ongoing large claimants, that was a very fair renewal with how much they've lost this year with those claimants. They've lost well over $1 million in reinsurance with those claimants. So it's a good thing we had that protection. So the increase is $107,000. So the recommendation, when we met with Financial, the Health Plan Advisory Committee, and our recommendation as an agency to you was not to increase premiums to the employees or to the district. And there's the reason why is, as we discussed this, as Dr. Langford went through in his financial presentation. You may remember that last year we came in and we told you you're very well funded in your reserve. That health plan trust is very well funded. You should have normally between 25 and 35% of your annual claims you want to keep in that reserve as a cushion. You guys currently have about 100%. Okay, you've got enough in that reserve to cover a year's worth of claims for your plan. So you're very well funded, and we are still, as Dr. Langford said, even though this year was the worst claims year you've had in 4 years because of those high-cost claimants, you still grew your reserve this year. So where we budgeted you last year, what we projected, you were still able to grow your reserves. So that's why we recommend that there's no increase in the premiums, because the reserves are very healthy. This $107,000, you were able to grow the reserves by $200,000 this year, in addition to the interest that you received. So you still saw that growth. So there's enough funds there to not have to increase costs to the district or to the members.
Are we permitted to pay that increase from those reserve funds?
Yes, that's what those funds are there for. Those funds are there. Essentially, you take all those premium dollars that you collect from members in the district and you put it into this fund. And that fund is used to pay claims, to pay any administrative fees, anything associated with the health plan is allowed to come out of those funds. So yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the administration recommends that the Board of Education maintain the current plan, design, and contribution strategy with no increase in premiums to members or the district as recommended by the documented attachment.
Thank you, Justin. Does anybody have any questions for Justin or our fine guest who's done a great job of laying out our experience this last year?
Is there any idea how much each person would go up if we didn't?
So currently, you have between active employees, retirees, part-times, you have approximately 900 on the plan. So you look at that 100,000, if you were to divide that by 12 months, 900 people, we could get to a number there if we needed to, yeah.
I didn't know if you already knew.
No, we had not projected that out. Again, just with the recommendation that we not raise them because we are so well funded at this point, and that was the point of everything that we did last year. So I know you guys are new to the board, and so last year when we made the change in the administrator and the network arrangements to allow us better discounts, better access for the members to improve the plan designs, we were able to do all of that while reducing premiums. But we still funded to a level that would allow that reserve to stay steady or to grow slightly so that you could do this. This is a multi-year strategy, that if we had a $100,000 increase, we could stay. We had a smaller increase, we could stay and get more stability in the medical plan for the district and the members.
Yeah, and I'd never want to raise the premiums. I just want to know.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I would move that we maintain the current design and contribution strategy.
I'll second that, Brent.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you, Derek. It's been moved and seconded that we maintain our current plan design and contribution strategy with no increase in premiums to members or district as recommended by the document. Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you very much for coming this evening.
You're welcome, thank you.
That brings us to letters training. Ms. Mwangi?
Yes, I would love to invite our friends from Voyager Learning, and Elaine is welcome to come join us as well from the Southwest Regional Professional Development Center. Before you tonight is something new, and these ladies are here to present to you because it is something new for our district, and the information I think you will find interesting. This is the science behind teaching reading. This is not about a resource, it's about knowledge. I will turn it over to Miss Pam, and she's going to take us through a presentation to help you understand just exactly what Letters is about and why we're bringing this recommendation for you this evening.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy you're so interested in empowering your teachers, right? To give them that knowledge base. I've been an educator for over 30 years, just to give you a little bit of information. And those first 10 years, I truly didn't know what it meant to teach a student how to read, right? All my energies, all my focus, it was there. And I wanted to help my kids, but I did not have that knowledge base to empower me when I worked extra with my students. You know, I moved them this much, and if I would have had the knowledge base, I could have had my students soar and move this much. It was becoming a reading interventionist and learning more about the science of reading that made the difference for me. And so I love the opportunity to share what Letters, which means language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling. And I want you to key in on that word essential. These aren't just optional. These are essential skills that our teachers need to know to get our students to where they need to be, right? To be independent, strong readers. So it is a professional development, and it's a professional development based on the science of reading. We said that a couple of times, that over 30 years of reading research is what we're talking about, and we have seen that increase, and we've seen the power of what Letters has done for teachers. We've got 10 years of proven resources that we can share with you guys. What are we looking at? We're looking at literacy improvement, right? What is that science of reading that's going to help our teachers do the best that they can for our students? We follow structured literacy. And you might say, okay, I've heard that term before somewhere. That structured literacy is what IDA focuses on. These are the principles and the concepts we know that students need to know. Although it's focused on for kids with dyslexia, for our kids who are on level, above level, or below level, understanding that structured literacy is going to help our students no matter where they are. Again, helping them score. We are focused on that explicit, systematic instruction. Kids don't learn through osmosis, right? We don't just place them there and they begin to learn. It's that language and that literacy and the understanding. It's helping our teachers be prescriptive and diagnostic. Think about going to the doctor, right? We want to make sure our doctor understands what's wrong so we can give them the right medicine. And that's the same thing we're looking at empowering our teachers to have. Why? We use that data. Teachers use data to decide, okay, this is what my students need a little bit more of, right? This is what my students need to soar above, or this is where I can differentiate from my students who are struggling. We do differentiate based on the data. So that's knowing and understanding what each one of our kiddos know. And what is the end result? Competent and content teachers. Who doesn't love a happy teacher, right? Who enjoys their work here? So that's what Letters is all about. We do have a variety of success stories. Just want to share one with you. In Mississippi, there was a broad initiative, again, focusing on your K-3 teachers and making sure they understand that science of learning to read. An outside source, the Regional Education Laboratory from Florida Center for Reading Research, went into independent study and focused on how teacher behaviors change the trajectory of student success, right? You go, well, that makes sense, doesn't it? It definitely does. What was focused, what was studied? Well, the teacher knowledge of those early literacy skills, the engagement of kids. Are they with us? Are they understanding? Your quality of instruction, right? As well as how competent your teachers are. And we found that broad success here. We can see the correlation between teacher knowledge and student achievement. That goes without saying. So if you want some more information in regards to that, we can provide you with that study. So you get a broad understanding of what was done and how that helps students across the state of Mississippi. I'm showing you guys my absolute favorite graphic. And this graphic really dives into the understanding of what reading takes. I think it's very simple. You know, most educators and most people do well, they will learn how to read despite the fact that maybe we're not using the most precise and the most effective manner of teaching reading. But we have some kids who definitely need that precise science of reading. And even our kids who do well, they learn more and soar higher when we focus there. This is called Scarborough's reading rule. And this is an infographic that was designed to show all of these strands of reading. You can take a look at the top layer of strands here. And that's that language comprehension. I like to call it the big C. And you know why? It's because that's where we all gravitate to. You have to read to comprehend, right? You have to understand to know. Well, it takes so much more. Look at all these strands, guys. Background knowledge. I have to know something to learn something, right? I move into the vocabulary. You have to understand the vocabulary within any new content in order to learn new content. We're looking at language structures, grammar. How many of you actually remember diagramming sentences, right? All right, so it's really understanding that structure of language and that syntax and how words work so that students can dive into text and understand. That verbal reasoning, I want you to think inference. I see somebody with an umbrella and a raincoat, so I can come to the conclusion that it's what? It's raining outside, right? So we want students to be able to pull the word from the page and come to those conclusions and be able to express themselves. I can even attach that to vocabulary. We want them to have that expressive vocabulary as well. Then that last little part, literacy knowledge. There's a difference between informational text and narrative text. Do students understand those differences? And can they replicate those differences? Can they dive into text and pull it apart so that I can gain meaning? And that's what that language comprehension is all about. And that piece you can see is all intertwined, and there's oral language involved there too, because it makes a huge difference. So we have these conversations with students. We want them to be able to read the word. But if you look at that bottom part of the strand, I see word recognition. Students have to be able to read independently and read well. Right? Our phonological awareness, that's that play with words and sounds and syllables at the foundational level and at the higher word analysis level. So we want our kids to be able to decode, and we want them to recognize those words with automaticity. You know, quite often I will type that word, and always the word processor tells me, hey, that's spelled incorrectly. No, automaticity is what we're looking at. And notice how all of those are entwined together. We need both word recognition and language comprehension, and we will teach your students how all of it works together. Because in the end, what do we have? That skilled, independent, strong reader. And teachers will understand how we can get students to the point to be that independent, strong reader. And I get so excited about letters because it's what we do for teachers. Again, competent, confident, effective, and content. Love to have a content teacher. This is another image that we use, and it translates into the same idea, but it's a more simplistic view. We call it the simple view of reading. I want you to notice word recognition and language comprehension, and I want you to notice in between there, we've got a multiplication sign, right? We're looking at reading comprehension to be the product of both. We can't focus on one or the other. They both must be heavily entwined together so we can support our teachers. Remember, I used the term prescriptive and diagnostic. We look at data and study data to help meet the needs of individual students. We use the data to differentiate for our students. We talk about benchmark data and where students are compared to what maybe of the students their particular age or grade. How can we build that skill level? So we identify students who may be falling behind, who may be at risk. We also look at studying diagnostically, right? So I want to diagnose again and see, oh, my students are having trouble in this strand or that strand, and here is what you can do to help that student and differentiate for them. We even focus on spelling. You know, we don't know have to learn how to spell. Do you hear that? All the time. We've got spell check. And you know, when you type something in the text, it's going to tell you. But actually, there is a huge reason why we have to know how to spell. That automaticity in writing, you want students to be able to write these wonderful multi-paragraph essays. They need to have fluency in writing. There's something that happens in the brain. We're going to talk a little bit about the brain research. When we are automatic, with both our reading and writing, then we're using less cognitive desk space. If I've got more cognitive desk space, then guess what? I've got automaticity, and I can think about higher order skills, right? Higher functioning skills. I can take the kids to the next level when they're automatic with reading and writing and spelling. And so we build those skills for our students here. So moving on with that, okay, I'm going forward. When we talk about the writing, cognitively, understanding linguistics of our language, because guys, our language is deep. We don't have a one-to-one correspondence, right? We've got some Greek, we've got some Latin, we've got our Anglo-Saxon words, and we got a little bit of French in there. We teach students all of this information because otherwise, you know, you give the kind of response I gave when I was a brand newbie teacher. Oh, I don't understand this language. English is just like that. Wouldn't it be great to say, yes, that's unusual, and this is why our language is this way? Students eat it up understanding our word history and understanding the patterns in our language, because our language is 86% phonetic and pattern-based. Isn't that a wonderful thing to be able to tell students, right? The history of our language, it helps them grow. So this is just a wonderful graphic, and we use lots of graphics because visuals are awesome, not just for kids, but visuals are awesome for our teachers as well. We look at our researchers, and this is an example from Aries phases of reading, and we're shifting from that pre-alphabetic to early alphabetic to later alphabetic, and we're getting our kids to that consolidated alphabetic phase here. When I think about the pre-alphabetic phase, it's looking at those golden arches. You know what I'm talking about, guys? What am I talking about when I say golden arches? I'm talking about McDonald's, right? So kids who are very young can see those and go, McDonald's. They're not reading a sign, but they're recognizing those symbols. And students move through these phases. Sometimes they're in more than one phase, but again, we're teaching teachers to be what? Prescriptive and diagnostic, and how to move students through the phase so that they can use the consolidated alphabetic phase to dive into reading with automaticity. I have here a picture of the brain. Our students, as they're learning to read and begin to read well and read with automaticity, we call them left brainers. So I want you to imagine the left side of the brain right now. And I want to talk a little bit about what's happening in the brain, because this is what we dive into with teachers. So they understand the why behind the processes and the things that we do. First, we start off with those speech sounds. You know what? A child will learn any language they're immersed in, right? So using an understanding of speech and really honing into those skills are the first stages of learning how to read, and making sure our students use that understanding, that they activate that phonological processor is what we start with. In the back of the brain, we have what's called an orthographic processor. I'm talking about the squiggly line that makes the letter S, the straight line that you might see in the letter B, D, or whatever. We put them all together. And the brain processes and makes that sound symbol correspondence going through something we call the angular gyrus. Now, we don't teach students all these terms, but we do teach educators the science of reading so they understand what's going on in the brain and the importance of activating the phonological processor before we make that sound symbol correspondence, right? Now, we don't stop there, do we? Because it's not just about reading the word, it's about understanding. That's the purpose of learning to read. The big C, as I said before. That language comprehension, we activate the meaning processor, and we're talking about the breadth and depth of word knowledge in the context processor. How do I use the word? If I say the word bat, do I mean the animal? Or do I talk about that long stick I used to hit a ball? Am I talking about the old lady who won't let me get my ball out of the back of her yard, right? So those are things we teach our students directly, explicitly, and systematically. Right. This is another image of those processors, and you can see that they're all intertwined and work together. We walk through that process of how the brain operates, because what do we want to do? We want to have it automatic for our students. Sometimes we have students who struggle a bit, and we talk about what to do for those students, because all but 2 to 5% of students can learn how to read, and we can get them to where they need to be so they can focus on those higher order skills as well. here is a statement, and I know there's a lot to read there, but I'd like to go through what the mission is. What's the focus of this professional development? Because it's all about student achievement, right? How do we get that? Well, we've got that skill and structure. And that skill and structure will do what? It'll help to change the lives of these students. So change that trajectory from one of failure to one of success so that it can be anything and do anything. This is a research-based professional development. Again, empowering teachers, helping them to be happy and content with the successes they're seeing with their students, and to activate that deep knowledge of skills. I'm going to tell you, though, I was so empowered myself when I figured out, oh, I was just doing it wrong. I'm doing it better. I'll never forget my Latoyas and my Benjamins that I could have done more with, but I'm so happy about all the other students. I was impactful in changing, right? So I'm so excited that you all are going to be that champion of change for the students in your district. And I talk a lot. I get excited about this because of the change it makes. But this is a little time for you to answer any questions that you might have, hopefully.
Yeah, I'll kind of explain. Elaine is here from the Southwest Center. So this is something that Elaine has been trained on through the Southwest Center that she's going to be able, so we're kind of joining forces between the two of them with our training, our first cohort. So what we are working to build is capacity of knowledge with our teachers, starting with the elementary level, but building people at every site, building teachers at every site who go through this information, gain this knowledge, and they are able to work with their staff over time. So this year we would have 30 participants representing all 11 elementary schools go through this training with Elaine as the facilitator. It's a blended online professional development where they're going to be learning online, and they're also going to have face-to-face time with Elaine. Southwest Center is putting on this professional development for the region, but she's also going to be coming just specifically for Joplin because of the size of our district and the amount. If we signed up for her training, we would take it all at once. So this first year, these 30 group of facilitators will go through Volume 1. This summer, they will learn how to be facilitators of Volume 1. Next year, they'll be able to give Volume 1 to their schools while they're learning Volume 2, become facilitators of Volume 2, and then turn around and give the language comprehension Volume 2 to their school. So over the next few years, it is professional development at our elementary level that really can be a game changer, I believe, for our reading achievement and improving those scores. Like I said, it's the knowledge, it's the why, it's the science behind. If you think of a bachelor's degree for teaching, you take a developmental reading course, and you probably take another assessment reading course. Beyond that, when they come to us in the classrooms, we're doing a lot of professional development within ourselves to teach the concepts behind reading. This will support the curriculum that we have adopted with Into Reading at the elementary level. The Haggerty work is very much supported by letters. So the background, Steve and I, as we were transitioning, attended a session with Allison and Elaine at Southwest Center, and it has kind of grown into where we are today of finally bringing this before you with a plan of how to get this knowledge to our teachers.
And when we talk about Volume 1 and Volume 2, we can take a look at the strands from the reading room. That Volume 1 would be that word recognition, basic knowledge, and Volume 2 would be that language comprehension. So they will learn all of the reading role because it's a complete comprehensive professional development.
Another piece of it is the bridge to practice. So they'll learn, they'll do the face-to-face, the online, and then they do it with their students in their classroom. So that gives them that deeper learning themselves too. Students.
So application, then you own it, right? Yes.
So what we proposed with Sarah's help is truly a partnership between Joplin Schools, Voyager Sopris Learning, and the Regional Service Center over a multiple number of years to build that internal expertise and the infrastructure to become much more self-supporting with that knowledge. That doesn't replace anything you've already embraced. It just gives your teachers knowledge to make ever better use of the resources they have in their classrooms.
It enhances.
Yeah, from my perspective, this is really where the rubber meets the road for strategic improvement. That's, we're looking for continuous improvement within our school district, and we're probably not going to improve our reading scores by doing the same thing that we're doing now. So if we are upping our training then for our teachers, then hopefully their skills will sharpen and be delivered to our students. And so I appreciate y'all being here, and I certainly appreciate why Sarah is recommending that the board approve this expenditure.
I have a couple questions.
We appreciate the opportunity.
Yes.
So, as a former building principal, when a former superintendent said, what are the 5 components of reading? I couldn't list them. And so I think it's really important that principals are trained.
Yes,
Just
that
a
is
little bit. Are principals going to get the same
Part of the proposal.
level
That is part of the
intense training?
proposal this evening. We will have an administrator training, and what that will look like is letters light, if you will. They'll have the research and the knowledge, but they also will have professional development of how to support reading in their schools and how to support the classrooms. So as this knowledge grows, I really have a feeling it's going to light a fire with a lot of our elementary teachers who are going to get excited about it. And the purpose, while it may seem intensive that we are going to have 30 facilitators essentially, the ability to have that cohesiveness and that common language not only in every school but across our district, I think is one of the first times we've taken a huge step like this to level common language in such a short time frame. And Dr. Moss and I visited about that of, how do we want to get everybody trained, how fast? But administrators are going to be a crucial role to that. They will have a handbook as well as the CD-ROM with information as well. And Voyager will be coming on site to do that for us.
Okay. The second question is, 30 teachers are going to go through the training, and it's K-1-2, is that correct?
So the 30.
So how do you pick those 30?
I'm
And
glad
what
you
if
asked
this
about
school
that.
doesn't have a kindergarten teacher going
Yes.
through it, but they have a first?
Yes.
Yeah.
So when you think about the science behind teaching reading, where your brain, those familiar in the education world, your brain immediately goes to where are students who are struggling? They're not getting what we're doing with reading and they're falling behind. While I am not going to say specifically it has to be a literacy teacher or it has to be, what I am going to do is put together the commitment for these 30 people, because I not only want principals to feel comfortable with who they're having represent their building, but I want our participants, the teachers who are going to be this first cohort, they're going to be a very critical group in disseminating this information over time. So I'm going to give criteria and have building principals work with their staff to figure out, it's no less than 2 at every site, and our larger schools will have up to 4. So it will be, everyone at every site will have somebody that they can work with, and then we'll have the cohort of 30 working together as well.
Okay, last question. So the first unit that they're going to go through is 4 units of 8 sessions. So that's 32 units. Each unit takes 10 to 20 hours. So that's an additional 320 to 640 hours that we're asking our teachers to work. We're the only profession that expects people to work beyond for no pay. How are our teachers going to do an extra 320 to 640 hours without getting burned out? And what are we doing for them? Will they have comp time? Will they be up at midnight on the computer doing the online portion of it? How does that work?
It varies.
Yeah, every
Districts may-
district does it a little differently.
Right.
Sometimes it's driven by union contract, whether they have to compensate teachers for that time. Sometimes it's based on the first cohort as based on that criteria. I want this knowledge so badly that I'm willing to volunteer that time. To providing sub-pay for a work day, to if you have PLC time, getting groups of teachers together.
Exactly.
It really goes across the spectrum, and that's something that our field implementation team would be happy to work with the district on what works best for Joplin. Not, here you go, good luck. We don't do that.
And Dr. Moss and I have talked about this. Anything outside of contract time. So their summer sessions where they're doing the facilitator, all of those will be compensated for their time. We've mimicked our plan for this very similar to how we have put people through adaptive schools to become facilitators of adaptive schools and cognitive coaching. So how we have worked creating facilitators in those areas is how we've kind of planned and mimicked. We'll have a launch date, and then they'll have 4 days with Elaine in person after every unit. Those days, if they are not a teacher that requires a sub, for example, a literacy who may be just pulling small groups, but if they do require a sub, then we'll kind of budget that out. I'm going to have to wait to see who our 30 will be before we can really plan through that. But it will parallel adaptive schools and cognitive coaching and the Jim Shipley continuous improvement.
And I think it's also relevant to mention that there is an opportunity for our teachers to obtain graduate credit.
I wonder.
Yes.
And so that could incentivize our teachers in the opportunity to move on the salary schedule.
Right.
Because it ultimately does end up being like taking a graduate course.
Oh, it is a graduate. It's graduate level for
So,
sure.
there is that credit opportunity there as well. And when I found out that piece, I was very encouraged. And we're looking at Eagle Advantage, and also some of our other professional development expenses are coming down as we're looking at adding letters like Eureka, because next year we're fairly confident that we're going to be able to provide that training here in Joplin, as opposed to the expenses of sending those large groups to Kansas City or Oklahoma City like we have in the past. So we've got some money to move to help cover these expenses.
And I do want to mention some of those hours do focus on the bridge to practice, where they're actually using classroom time. So they're learning the skills, they're learning the why and the how, and they're practicing within their classroom.
Yeah, I just didn't know if that 10 to 20 hours included the face-to-face and the bridge portion, or if that was just their own commitment of time doing the online and all that, because that's 16 hours.
It is a lot. It was good for clarification.
We say we want to be treated as professionals, but yet we expect for free work that we don't expect for free from any other occupation in this nation.
Exactly.
And so I don't want the program to get derailed.
Yes.
Because the teachers are getting burned out because there's so much for them to do that they're overwhelmed.
Yes.
We have to take care of our teachers.
Face one day a semester, so we try to spread that out so it isn't so overwhelming to the teachers too.
And you're being very strategic both in Sarah's plan and in your questions, because it's really important that as you select these people or they volunteer or whatever process you use, that they very much understand what they're committing to. I will say that we sort of estimate on the high side, because we would much rather tell you this is going to take more time than you thought, than less. But you're being very, very smart about it, because I have other districts where we've gone in and we've launched and everyone's all excited about it. And then teachers realize what they've signed on for. Right. And I've had a couple of teachers say, I really want it, but this year just won't work for me. I just had a baby, I'm finishing my master's, whatever. It has to fit right within their life right now as well, because it is a huge commitment.
I'm a big advocate, so I'm not asking that because
I
I'm very
know.
supportive of it. I feel like we need this desperately in our district for continuity across the 11 different buildings.
Oh, definitely.
But you're being strategic and smart about it.
Exactly. Those were common sense questions.
So I have some questions. So is it going to be voluntary or mandatory for our teachers?
This first cohort is going to be voluntary to get them through.
And then in the meantime, until we get all of our teachers trained, what resources are we using for literacy, and do we have a written out curriculum for K-5?
Into reading for 2-5 that we just adopted, we'll have that we're launching on the 12th. Steve put into place some of the Haggerty and the phonics for the primary grades. So a lot of that, I'm going to start gathering those grade levels, seeing where we're at, where our gaps are. This knowledge is going to help drive a lot of those conversations too. We're really good about putting resources into place. This is going to help the knowledge of why we're asking what we're asking to do.
My concern is, while we're getting trained, our brand new teachers, do they have what they need to go into the classroom and begin teaching their kids to read day one that may not be getting this training? So that's where that's coming from. What's the total cost?
Right now, it's spread out over several years. I'm not sure how much you want to have shared at this point.
So in your packet, you have the package. So for year one, for tonight, that includes the administrator training, the volume 1 cohort of 30, as well as that cohort going to become facilitators. All of that we've been able to arrange where that will be local, so we will not have to do any expenses of hotel or sending people anywhere. The total for that is $58,705.80. The second year, this is not what is brought before you tonight, but it has been mass planned out. The second year is where you will see the highest cost for the purpose. They will be completing volume 2, working with our teachers on volume 1, going to become facilitators of volume 2. So there's a lot going on in year 2, and that was part of my plan of mass planning this, because I don't want any surprises for this first 30, this cohort of teachers. I want them to know what they're getting into. That price you see there estimated, and we would finalize that for next year, but $84,716. I had a little shock when I first saw that, but then as I worked through it, some of our professional development that we have been spending money towards, because we have 1% of our budget that has to be allocated to professional development. Some of those things are coming off to where this will pick up. And tonight this is presented out of Title II funds, but we also have the 1% that we'll be using. When you go to year 3, really where you're at that, and these are estimates obviously as we kind of work through this, but by year 3, we will have a group of facilitators for volume 1 and 2. So at that point, we're just getting materials for volume 2 and keeping their certification to be a facilitator. And thereon after would just be our choice of how we use those facilitators, keeping their certification, but deploying that knowledge, whether we go up in grades, whether we address other levels. It will be kind of up to us at that point where we go with it. But the big purpose of this proposal tonight is understanding that we're building capacity. This is a long-range plan in the sense of the professional development and the knowledge, and providing continuity among our 11 elementaries in regards to teaching reading.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Sarah, you'll tell the initial 30 that, guess what, next summer you get to become facilitators of 1 while you're learning 2, while you're
that is going to be
overwhelming.
That's going to be part of the conversation.
Okay.
And again, that's the purpose of thinking long-term through this. So they know, if they know we may have teachers who really want to do this, they want to be a part of that first 30, and they're in the middle of grad school. For them to know you're going to get the training. It's not that you're not going to have the opportunity to access the training, but it may not be right timing for you to be a facilitator. Those are things that I want them to process and think about. So I'll be having conversations individually with principals and then having them work with their teachers, and then before we solidify that group, making sure everybody's on board and ready to go.
What happens if you lose a facilitator after the first year or the second year, and they're at this level, and then all of a sudden they're gone?
It happens.
Then what happens?
It does happen,
Yeah.
but we want to make sure we feed the teachers, even if we might lose one, right?
Yeah.
It
And
happens.
I think the principals make wise choices on who they're selecting to go through the training, and then we as a board keep increasing salaries that are necessary to keep them in our district.
It's possible, though, that,
Yeah.
a teacher
Happens.
could relocate or move that is a facilitator for us. That would be a risk involved with it. But I think knowing we have at least 2 at every building would be advantageous to know that it would be covered at every site.
And I'd just add to that is if that, say that happened when you're 3 or 4 years into this, any of your teachers who had gone through both volumes could qualify to then attend a training to become a facilitator to fill that spot if you felt that it was necessary.
Voyager puts on different facilitator trainings. This proposal is specific for Joplin. They've been very gracious to come straight to us, so we don't have to travel, we don't have to leave, and we can really get this training to a lot of our teachers in a short time frame compared to going a couple at a time.
We appreciate the cooperation among the 3 different entities.
Thank you all for being here this evening.
Thank you. They did traveled far, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we have an action item before us. I would entertain a motion.
I move we approve letters training.
Thank you, Dr. Ford. It's been moved.
I'll second.
Approve letters training. It's been seconded by Derek. Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this? I'd ask that you vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you all. That moves us to our next item on the agenda, which is consideration of the long-term facilities recommendation. Dr. Moss?
Sherry, may I?
Yes.
We have the letter. I'm just wondering, can we take I haven't had a chance to read it, and I kind of wanted to read it. Could we take a 5-minute recess?
Sure,
Maybe
but
10?
we've been in session for a little over an hour. We may need a break anyway.
5
So-
minutes.
I think break.
It says you may. And Southwest.
by Zachary and the group that he represented. I hope everybody else on the board did as well. With that, I will turn this agenda item over to Dr. Moss to get us kicked off.
Okay. The next action item is consideration of the Long-Range Facilities Committee recommendation, and you have at your seat, each of you, the hard copy of that board item. And this was developed after our work session last night, so you have that in hard copy, and Pat will make sure that that's posted soon. I'll just walk us through some of the pertinent facts, and these are all things that we have heard at various meetings and input sessions and even at our last board meeting. But to refresh everyone, the Long-Range Facilities Committee was formed so that we could get input to create a clear picture of what facility improvements need to be completed and to ensure that all Joplin School students have access to safe, quality, and equitable learning environments district-wide. We also reviewed our district's bonding capacity, and I believe Zach referred to that as well. There is opportunity at this point in time for a no-tax increase bond issue that would generate approximately $22 to $25 billion. The committee presented their findings to the board at your regular meeting June 25th. Priority concerns were outlined during that, and you have a list of those in front of you. To highlight a few, the modular classrooms that are in place at Kelsey Norman and Columbia, and then the various places across our buildings where we saw sharing of classrooms, lack of flexible learning spaces, handicapped accessibility, safety, and traffic and instructional concerns. Various combinations and options were considered, and the most emergent issues that came forth has been Kelsey Norman, West Central, and Columbia, as we've honed in on these discussions. The committee ultimately recommended to the board the construction of a new addition at Kelsey Norman alongside a new combined school for West Central and Columbia with a capacity to serve 450 students at a new site to be determined. Furthermore, the committee recommended utilizing a no-tax bond issue to finance the project, and finally, not to leave an abandoned building to degenerate at the former Columbia site once the project is completed. I also listed for you the alignment to some of the high points of our district strategic plan, particularly in the area of safety and efficiency and effectiveness. The group looked at and presented to the board a variety of data, including the facilities condition assessment reports, size and capacity analyses of each of our campuses, operational costs, climate and culture results, the demographer studies, facility standards reports, again, bonding capacity reports, construction cost analysis, engineering, geotechnical maps, and several facility tours. Concerning stakeholder voice, committee members included a variety of stakeholders across our community, as well as district staff, faculty, administration, parents, even students were on that committee. All the committee meetings were open to the public, and at the conclusion of the work, 6 public input sessions were held across the district. Patrons have spoken to the board during regular and special board meetings, as well as through various media outlets. The fiscal note estimates were provided to the group. The cost estimates range from $2.875 million for the Kelsey Norman addition to eliminate their modular unit to $19.6 million to combine Columbia and West Central at the new site. Concerning the recommendation, administration concurs with the recommendation of the Long-Range Facilities Committee and joins them in recommending that the district utilize its bonding capacity through a no-tax increase bond issue to construct an addition to Kelsey Norman as outlined, as well as a new combined elementary for West Central and Columbia at a new site yet to be determined.
Thank you, Dr. Moss. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Moss concerning that synopsis of what has happened today?
I don't have a question about the synopsis, but I do have a question, and I'm sorry to muddy the water at this late date about this. But after we got a list of the cost per pupil, per student, per school, then I saw that Jefferson was leading the pack Jefferson and Columbia and West Central are like $1,000 per student higher. So I wondered, was there ever any discussion among this committee about combining the three schools? And don't shoot me for saying that, because I know that'd be like a 600 school, like a Cecil or Irving. But I just wondered, was there ever that discussion? And would Jefferson, do they have the plot of land big enough or not?
Jefferson does not have a plot of land big enough.
Okay.
No. And there was, I think, some surface talk about that, but then I think when we talked about 600, I think that was the number that
it's big.
That was kind of just like, no, I think combining two schools would make a much better approach possibly at this time. And so, and I think the other thing with that, with the bigger school that you get, the more acreage you get into, and we were thinking we were challenged on it, on potential acreage if we could find it anywhere anyway. So I believe 450. We did get a price estimate and a look at a 600 student school, but it's also out of the bonding capacity as well. I think we're getting up in
Well, I
that
hadn't even
range.
thought about it, so that's why I hadn't brought it up until I saw that other report, and I went, whoa.
So we looked at, I think, some people on the committee talked about, Soaring Heights is the last school that we built besides Irving, And Irving can hold more than Soaring Heights, no question about it. But I think that was kind of the idea that was most favorable.
All right, thanks.
There was some discussion, though, about it.
There was?
Yeah, there absolutely was. I was at a table with
And then Deb, I have the information on the Jefferson site itself, if you want to delve further into that.
Yeah, I'll look at that later.
I invite additional comments from the board.
Well, I just want to say that as a board member, this is probably the hardest decision that I've had to make or be a part of. But that's what we're elected to do. I respect the Facilities Committee's recommendation. They put a lot of time in. They looked at lots of different resources, lots of different data, and I believe they did a thorough investigation. The thing that I can't get past is that we can't change where Columbia sits, and I wish we could. To me, that is just such an unsafe location, and we've woke it up, we've awakened it by doing the construction that we have there, I truly believe. I'd love to renovate the building, but all the renovation in the world isn't going to change what it sits on. So that's where I'm really struggling, and I just want people to know that this is not an easy decision, and that we've spent the last few years looking into it and really trying to remedy the problems that we have there, and that we have involved experts. I think some of the newer community members don't realize what we have been doing over the last few years, and that this isn't something that we've just pulled out of our hats recently. So it's an extremely tough one, but I do believe we need to do what's best, not just for our kids at Columbia and West Central, but for the whole district. So it's my 2 cents. I just had to speak my piece.
I'd like to add to that. I think, and you're correct, it is a hard decision. One of the biggest things is we're not dealing with a mine shaft. We're dealing with basically a mine from the last maps we got. I have a hard time building, knowing the issues that you can have on that type of ground. When we're elected to be fiscally responsible with our taxpayer or stakeholders' money. So this is a difficult decision, but we have to look at the safety of the students and be fiscally responsible. So that's kind of I'll add 2 cents to your 2. We got 4.
We got 4. That'll buy you a piece of paper.
No,
Maybe.
piece of gum.
Well, I've been no shrinking violet from this issue. It's a difficult one, and one that I'm conflicted over, frankly. And so I want the world to know that I am conflicted. And so tonight I will be voting with a heavy heart but a clear mind. And that clear mind comes from reading a lot, from accepting information from friends and administrators. When I read what was given to us this evening, I appreciate its content. I think it's really important to recognize that the facts as to what is a small school is debatable. The neighborhood issue is one that I consider the most significant, frankly. And the problem that I have with one of our neighborhood schools has already been discussed tonight. The mines, we've got foundation issues all over the place there, and I don't know if moving it a few feet south fixes that. The 2.7 acres there is probably inadequate for any type of agreement that all of us would come to concerning if we were going to build a school. At our other site, we have significant issues as well. They have the same issues inside. The school classroom sizes are apparently inadequate for 21st century learning. And that is a compelling problem for me. It's an equal problem at West Central as it is for Columbia. There's no distinction there. They're the same size classrooms. These buildings were built a year apart. It's difficult for me to address the issues at one school and ignore or postpone the resolution for our kids at West Central.
Great.
So, I look at this and it's great, and I love the passion. I want everybody to know I've been a little frustrated with the lack of passion for more of our public. Last night we had a work session in which we had 4 or 5 members of the public present. And those 4 or 5 that are present oppose, I think, this idea. I get it. I oppose it too, in many ways. I don't know if the people who weren't here support it or what. I mean, do they not care? I have no idea. But I've got an independent facilities committee filled with professional people, an architect who has helped build a new high school, the same architect who has helped renovate the first floor of this building. That architect is not new to this idea, and that architect gave us a fair representation, I believe, of the cost that we're looking at. We have researched the cost. You cannot fix the existing building. I don't believe you can fix West Central or Columbia in those classrooms to meet the education needs that we have for our kids right now, for just the way we educate, collaborative learning opportunities. We have, people reference music and other things that are important. There's special education opportunities that are being missed. There's ADA compliance issues. We've got access issues in these schools. So I acknowledge and I admit that a 10-acre site, I think, is not necessary for whatever we're doing. I want the public to know that. I think it's probably ideal, Dr. Moss. She's been hammering me on that the whole time. I get it. I think we can find a smaller lot and facilitate what needs to be done. I don't know where it is. The problem when we talk about a new site for a school is that typically when we build a new school, we're building it for community development purposes. Here we have a completely developed community. You've got, this community was developed in the 1920s. Rarely are you seeking a new site for a 1920s development because you've already built the building. But how many of those situations are you dealing with mine shafts? When I read about what's going on in Pennsylvania or wherever else, I don't think they were dealing with mine shafts. I don't. I don't know if they were dealing with 7th Street. Maybe they were. We took down a fence that would keep our kids safe because it made it look like a prison. I don't care. I'd keep our kids safe. I read on here, safety, a relatively minor concern according to the principal there. I want you to know that's his job to tell you that our kids are safe. And I believe they are. But this first time we have a problem with a kid where he or she doesn't belong, we weren't right.
So what are we going to do?
Well, I'd like to add, I had a lot of people email me, and I want to make sure they understand the reason I didn't respond was because my mind changed 15 times. I didn't appreciate history growing up, but as you get older, you do appreciate it because you're old. But I've grown to love the structures and what they represent a lifetime of our kids. And I'm not from here, but I love this area. I love Columbia. And I have a lot of friends that go there, that have kids that go there. But my biggest concern has been the safety, because like Sherrick was saying, if one child gets hurt, I couldn't live with the decision of not taking care of that. Regardless if we think it's a 2-year, we all know we're not perfect. We can say it's good for 2 years, but tomorrow it could collapse. We don't know what's underneath there. And I know Joplin, I work in the title industry for 27 years. I know we have mines everywhere, and nothing is safe here. The neighbor that I lived in Grand Avenue, middle of Joplin, 1 block over, their drive fell in. This is what we all here move here for, and we know. So we accept it and move forward, but my biggest, I read everything, and I want what's best for West Central and for Columbia and for Kelsey Norman. Every school has a special place in all of our hearts. And I just hope that you understand this is tough for all of us. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Deb.
I'm sorry.
Well, I just, with everything, you know, we've gotten to talk to so many people, and we've had the meetings, and this is a difficult decision. And I hope that the public can see how it affects each of us. So, you know, this is not an easy decision. I'll turn it forward to you, Brent.
I would just add that this is not a rushed decision at all.
No.
To imply that it is a rushed decision would be ignoring the facts. And so I wanted to just recap, and I'm probably not the best person for this. So if anyone else wants to jump in, please feel free to. But for me, this started over a year ago. It was June of last year. We sat before our microphones and we approved a $60,000 expenditure to solidify the southeast corner of the safe room. In November, the administration came to us and said, that $60,000 didn't work. We're going to need $300,000, almost $300,000. And then as a board, we decided throwing good money at a bad situation is not a good solution. And so we sent our administration back to the drawing table and said, let's find other solutions or a better solution. And so as a board, we visited these sites. We saw firsthand the dilapidated structures. The night that we visited the structure, we were informed that in the last year, the crack in the FEMA shelter had moved 7/8 of an inch, and that it was accelerating. We learned that night. That was information that just came to us. So at that board meeting, we embraced the opportunity to embolden or empower a committee to try to figure out with the best information they could get what would be best for a school district. That was in February and March and April and May. At least twice a month that committee met. Members of the board were on that committee. We shared information along the way, every board meeting. Those meetings were made public. Board members were welcome. The community was welcomed. They were asked to bring a recommendation to the board in May. They didn't feel comfortable. They wanted more time. They wanted to do more research. They asked more questions. And in June, they brought a recommendation. Once the recommendation came to the board, we wanted more input from the community. So we established 6 public forums for community members to engage in us further, to either provide information or to share the information that was shared with us by the committee. Then we had a 2-hour work session, and now we're before you tonight. So this has been over a year-long process, and the decision, whatever decision is made, is not one that's been rushed. It's been I know the board has done, and the administration definitely has done their due diligence. So I wanted to share that.
Kind of.
And I probably missed some of the things that were done, but those were the highlights that I remember.
I would kind of like to share, like Lori did, from a personal point of view. I lost my neighborhood school to a heart attack. Columbia is losing their neighborhood school to a cancer. It's very sad, and I totally feel it. But in 2012 and 13, Columbia was promised a new school, and then those funds were reallocated somewhere else. And I retired, and I moved and changed houses in cities so I could get on this board and get Columbia the school they were promised. So I am happy that Columbia and West Central kids are going to get something that they have been living with substandard standards for the last 6 years. They have not enjoyed what the students in our other schools have enjoyed, and that is not right. So my perspective is I'm really happy for those kids. Absolutely.
I would add a little bit to what Deborah said, and that is, through this process, my decision has become easier. I want everybody to know it. I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Derek. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Deb. It's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Go find a site.
Find us a site.
We'll start tomorrow.
Yep.
And write a community block development grant to get a playground put on your land. You'll qualify for it.
Could not agree more.
Can you repeat that?
Write a
community
No,
Please.
community block development grants. They're provided by the state to the cities to develop neighborhoods.
There's going to be something
Encourage
awesome
them.
there.
We, at Irving, we were able to develop the running track at our school and do some other things using community block development grant funds. Uh-huh.
Dr. Langford, we are to our accounts payable.
Okay, I didn't realize I was up that quick, but you have the record of the accounts payable, and I think it's a little over $6 million that are paid out. Of course, payroll, again, represents the largest portion of that, but because we are at this point of the school year, capital projects were significant expenditures, and then also in the general fund, and part of the reason on that general fund is we changed our insurance. Some of the insurance that we were paying in January didn't make a lot of sense to get halfway through the year and then get to the year, so we paid 6 months last year and started all over. So we had a $300 and some thousand payment for insurance that would have been deferred out. So if you really look, we're $2 million more than the same month last year because of some significant expenditures relative to insurance costs being the major one, and then capital projects. We're doing air conditioning updates and just a lot of work that have been going on in the capital projects fund. So you have the entire list of all the bills, but it appears to me that we're within our budget intentions on all of them.
Thank you, Dr. Langford. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Langford concerning our accounts payable? I would entertain a motion to pay our bills.
So moved.
Thank you, Derek.
Second.
Thank you, Deborah. It's been moved and seconded that we approve our accounts payable. Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. That moves us to our FTC audit, and I believe Dave told me that we could do numbers 5 and 6 together.
Okay. And I'd like to recognize Dave Rockers and Penny Williams, who are with us tonight from Franklin Tech, and we're looking at adult nursing testing software first. And I want to point out in the board packet under your pertinent facts that our adult practical nursing program has accepted 33 student applicants to begin their career training for this next school year. I think that's exciting.
That's correct. Yes, we're very, very excited. We're actually approved for 40, but we're taking 33 this year with a transition in our new facility, and we'll be even more ready next year.
So we approved a textbook package recently, and now we're looking to approve the software testing package that'll help them practice for tests such as their, is it NCLEX?
For their
Did I say
NCLEX,
that?
yes, that's for their licensing. And what it is it's a software package that goes along with this new set of this textbook package. It includes besides the predictor exams that we have to have and the practice tests, it also includes adaptive quizzing, case studies, and also student remediation if necessary. So it's a more predictive package, I guess, for our students and to get them ready for their licensing exam. And in addition, from moving from the previous company that we had to this new, moving from ATI to Elsevier, it's a cheaper cost, or less expensive, I should say. And the software testing is less expensive for our students, approximately $143 just for the student side. And all together with a new test book package, and if you all approve this for the testing side, it's approximate savings of $500 per student.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is considerable, and they're receiving more.
Because we utilize tuition and fees to cover all these.
That's correct. It's student tuition and fees, and no district dollars or state funding is a part of that.
Thank you, Penny. Does anybody have any questions for Penny concerning this?
Sounds great.
We would typically move the item by item, but we're going to go on to 6 and take them both
Okay.
together, if that's okay.
And the next purchase request is for 10 multifunction welders for Franklin Tech Center secondary and adult welding programs. So these will be utilized during the day and the evening, correct?
Yes, yeah, they're used with both of our programs. We have 20 Lincoln welders currently. 2 or 3 years ago, our advisory committee recommended that we purchase some Miller welders, which Miller and Lincoln are probably the top 2 in the industry, and they felt like that was important for our students to get experience on both. And with all of our programs, they're on a 3-year rotation for equipment purchases, so we've kind of held off until this is a year that welding is on it. And we have a few machines that the wear on them. We've got at least one that's not working at all, so we will surplus the 10 that we replaced with the Miller welders. So we'll be probably coming to you the next board meeting if this is approved with that. So.
I do have one question.
Please.
Many TIG machines coming?
Yeah, 10.
Okay.
We have 20 in there now. We're going to pull 10 of the Lincolns out, replace them with 10 Millers. And so we'll continue them with that. So.
I need to talk to you about, I'd like to take a TIG class. It's the only welding I can't do.
These are a multi-purpose. They'll TIG, MIG, and stick weld. So.
Do you have any spool machines over there? Are you teaching
yes,
any?
we do.
You?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve both the practical nursing testing software and purchase of the welding machines.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Lori and Derek. It's been moved and seconded that we approve items 5 and 6 on our regular agenda. Is there any additional discussion concerning those items? I'd ask that you vote.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you all very much.
Thank
Could
you.
I say something, Mr.
Please.
President?
Please.
Again, about the program that the board made a decision to renovate this building for, which is one of Governor Parsons' highest priorities is that work-ready, or, improving the workforce. And this location, in my opinion, is going to lend itself very well to the adults in this community increasing their opportunities. So I congratulate the board for doing that.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
7 and 8 have been pulled from this. That moves us to item 9, which was our meal price increase. Dr. Sacchetti, you get to give us the bad news.
Yes. Rick Kinkle couldn't be here tonight, and he would have talked to you about this. But essentially, we did not raise meal prices last year. We raised them, the last time we raised them was 2017 in July. And we're asking for a nickel increase on elementary, middle school, and high school lunches. One of the things that we have to make sure that we do is that we don't have the free and reduced lunch program pay for the paid program, so we have to stay in line with that. Obviously, it would probably be more interesting to the feds if we, or the USDA if we increase our prices more, but we try to keep our prices as stable as possible when it comes to our students, because we know we have a lot of kids in a lot of different kind of situations. So we're only asking for a nickel this time and to leave the adult prices stable where they're at, based on recommendations from Rick Kinkle and the Food Service Department, and just kind of trying to make sure that we do increase our prices to stay with the program, but also be cognizant of our students and their needs.
Thank you, Dr. Saketa.
Is that raising reduced prices as well, or just full price lunches?
Full price.
Full price.
Do I have a motion to approve the meal price increases?
So moved.
Thank you, Derek.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph. It's been moved and seconded that we approve these increases. I ask that you vote.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
And yes. That moves us to policy updates for first reading. Dr. Moss?
Yes, as Brent Jordan outlined about our policy committee, we're presenting for first reading tonight the prohibition against discrimination, harassment, retaliation, and also updating our policy with USDA nutrition regulations requiring districts to have non-discrimination statements and compliant procedures for nutrition programs. So this is basically mandated language to keep us compliant in our policy, particularly as it pertains to food service. We would recommend first reading approval.
Thank you, Doctor. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Derek. It's been moved. And Doctor, thank you. That's Dr. Joseph Pat. It's been moved and seconded that we approve these policies for first reading. Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. That brings us to our plus deltas. I don't really have any tonight.
I have a big one.
Great.
Insurance, medical insurance. Unheard of that you don't have to increase
Don't
premiums.
have to
down
increase,
here.
yes.
Yeah.
That's investment performance, so
Yes,
we're really
it is.
pleased about that, and we hope we can maintain that.
I have one. It was a tough night, and we all come from different backgrounds, and we have such different personalities, but when it comes to the important stuff, we all come together and really look at the facts and try our best to understand them and do the right thing.
I think that's a very important plus tonight, because this was a hard decision.
Yeah.
I'm going to reiterate to the public that it was not a hard decision for me, and I want them to understand why. So if anybody has any questions, I will continue to answer them for the foreseeable future. I am positive this is a positive decision for our district.
I would like to say, I'd like to thank all the people that were involved.
Yes.
All the
Yes,
people
in
that
that
was
committee.
involved, all the people that was here tonight, that spoke to the board, that wrote letters and that were interested, as well as a special thank you to the facility committee.
Absolutely.
And we also have a committee inside the district here that we, a small committee of administrators and people in the utility department, and buildings and grounds, that work with us to make sure that we do what we can do to help you get the best capital outlay, next steps each year to try to keep up the buildings. But the long-term facility committee really took their work serious, and I really appreciate their work.
I'd like to echo those sentiments.
Yeah.
And my plus would be approving of the letters training, knowing where it happens is in the classroom with our teachers.
My wife was texting me during that going, I approve it. I approve it.
So, and I think, remembering we're here to educate kids and we're investing in our teachers and their capacity to improve our achievement with our kids.
Yes.
We're here tonight for our students, for our teachers, for our administrators, for our community, and I think we served them all tonight.
And it's right on the board. Student readiness, learner support, effective and efficient, and I believe that those tenets drove every bit of your contemplations and your ultimate, as you put it so eloquently, Sherry, clear mind, but yet heavy heart with the decision that we came to.
I would entertain a motion. Oh, please, Derek.
Would you entertain a motion to adjourn?
I would. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you,
Beats
Deborah.
staying here all night.
Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes, thank you all.
We're on.